Jon Rothstein, how are you?
Never better, guys. Again, like Stallone and Rambo too, day by day.
There you go. Okay, so let's look at what has been, unprecedented in terms of how many of these high seeds have made it this far. So no team seeded 12th or higher has ever made it to a Final Four. Does that change this year, John?
I don't think so, Maggie. I mean, it's definitely possible, but I mean, I don't see that right now. But again, as we have learned over years of talking, discussing, and obviously dissecting the NCAA tournament, the more you know about college basketball, the worse you're going to do in your bracket. I mean, we have a team in Oregon State that was picked 12th in the Pac-12 preseason poll. Now, obviously, playing in the Sweet 16, they'll play Loyola Chicago. So I foresee, Baylor, Houston, Gonzaga, and Alabama marching forward here this weekend, but obviously crazier things have happened in the NCAA tournament.
All right, let's talk about some of these games individually. I mean, you mentioned Oregon State, John. Loyola Chicago, Porter Moser's done an unbelievable job with that program. They were a top 20 team during the regular season, seeded as 8th, upset Illinois, led them pillar to post. Matchup against Oregon State. When you look at that region, I know you said you like Houston. Do you look at it end up being Loyola Chicago and Houston in that regional final?
That's what I'm taking, Moose. Houston's been, one of the great, I think, rebounding teams in college basketball this year. They've been obviously great, on the glass all season long. They also lost the American Athletic Conference Player of the Year in Caleb Mills. And, Syracuse is not vintage Syracuse up front in the 2-3 zone. And, I think, you're going to see Houston have an opportunity to really, really get on the offensive glass in this game. Loyola Chicago, again, I think a lot of people are looking at this game as a coronation. I do think Oregon State's front court of Roman Silva and Warith Alatishe could make things difficult for Cameron Crowder. But, yeah, in that region, I'm taking Loyola Chicago and Houston.
John, it's interesting because, you look at Oral Roberts as that 15 seed, right? And I believe it was Florida Gulf Coast that was the last 15 seed, Dunk City, with Andy Enfield, right? Who's obviously the USC coach now, who's going to be taking on Oregon. I mean, it's going to be Arkansas. That's not going to be obviously easy for them. But does the Cinderella narrative continue with Oral Roberts? What do they have to do to possibly even pull this off?
Well, I think, you're going to have a huge game, obviously, out of Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner. Another thing, you have to take away Arkansas's ability to get easy baskets. We saw Texas Tech do that. The pace of the game was much slower in, obviously, the round of 32 than it was for Arkansas against Colgate. So you have to eliminate the opportunities for Arkansas to get in transition. But you're also going to need to be able to produce out of those two guys who, again, are as good of a 1-2 punch that we've seen in the NCAA tournament, I think, really so far. But the supporting cast is a big question.
How about Baylor and Nova in the other game in that on Saturday? Baylor, Nova overcoming the injuries to get here and get to the Sweet 16. Baylor's been well thought of all year long, thought to be the top, number 2 team in the country. What about Baylor and Nova? Could Jay Wright and the Wildcats pull off an upset?
Well, I think, Villanova has obviously wrung out the sponge here, and they're going up against a team that looks like vintage Villanova in the sense that Baylor's chemical makeup with Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague is reminiscent of the great teams that Jay Wright has had at Villanova. So Villanova getting to a Sweet 16, obviously without Collin Gillespie, is a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. But with that said, I think when you look at them obviously matching up with Baylor, I would expect Baylor to advance.
John, what's the biggest mismatch, in your opinion, in the Sweet 16?
Good question, Mag. I think right now we're looking at everybody against Gonzaga as being obviously a mismatch just because Gonzaga's ceiling looks so far and away, obviously above everybody else. I think Creighton's been somewhat under the radar here in the NCAA tournament because everybody expected Creighton maybe to fall to Santa Barbara in the first round. That was a game they narrowly escaped. But I think if we're looking at mismatches, I would say either Arkansas, Oral Roberts, or the Gonzaga Creighton game.
Got it.
John, let's touch upon the other Sweet 16 matchups, those that are going to battle that out on Sunday. A lot of people focused in on that 5 o'clock start, Florida State and Michigan. The Seminoles, long, defensive. I mean, they go deep as well. The Wolverines, without Livers, their best player. They've gotten here to the Sweet 16 for Juwan Howard. How about Michigan and Florida State? Who do you think ends up marching on to the regional final?
I'm taking Florida State because the one thing that Leonard Hamilton has always had is a bevy of big men up front to rotate, and that's going to be huge in this game against Hunter Dickinson. Florida State defensively was absolutely terrific against Colorado. Michigan, I thought, made timely shots against LSU. Florida State is going to have to be in a situation, too, where sooner or later it gets a great game out of Scottie Barnes. Now, Scottie Barnes is the best long-range prospect in this basketball game. He's a one-and-done type talent. He hasn't had a one-and-done type season based on productivity. But think about this. He's the third straight player that Florida State has brought off the bench that's going to be a first-round pick. 2 years ago was Fiondu Kabengele. Last year was Patrick Williams. That's a pretty interesting nugget when you think about the Seminoles.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Okay, UCLA, Bama. I keep thinking about Nate Oates, John, and I'm like, you know, Alabama, we know so much as a football school, not a basketball school, and the way that he's approached this, the success that he's had, like, is he going to be, if a job opens at a blue blood, you know, would he be more likely to leave Alabama? But how much would beating UCLA, and UCLA is a great story, first four and out of the Sweet 16 with Mick Cronin. What do you think is most interesting about this matchup?
Well, I think the fact, like you said, that UCLA is a team that lost 3 projected starters from obviously the team it thought it was going to have this year and found a way into the Sweet 16. They lost 4 games to end the season. 4 games they all led in the second half. But, you know, we have a UCLA team right now that obviously is a blue blood and brand name, but maybe not obviously in tournament seed and representation. They played great basketball. But Alabama is a full-fledged juggernaut on both sides of the floor. They're one of the best two-way teams in college basketball. They've gotten a big lift in this NCAA tournament from Javon Quinterly, the Villanova transfer. And, you know, in addition to that, they have a player in Herb Jones who's as unique a player as we have left in this NCAA tournament, you know, a point forward, you know, with great size, very similar to a Stacey Augmon type player who initiates their offense to start the game. So Alabama, a team on both sides of the floor that has enough to be the last team playing on April the 5th.
Yeah, when they're hitting threes, they look unbeatable. You know, John, what's been the key for the Tide? Because, you know, they're fun to watch and, you know, they're offensively, they get on a roll. But to go from where they were beginning of the season unranked to where they are right now, conceivably you can make the argument that, you know, they're the third best team left in this tournament when you look at the Crimson Tide. What led to the rise of Bama this year, college basketball?
Well, all about defense, Moose. All about defense. You know, one of the reasons why I didn't think Alabama was going to be this good, and I thought they were an unproven commodity here in the entering the NCAA tournament, or excuse me, entering the season, was just because they gave up over 80 points a game last year in SEC play. After losing to Western Kentucky in December, Nate Oates really took a stand with his team, forced them to get better defensively. The rest is history. They've been a juggernaut on offense. They've been a juggernaut on defense. And again, they have the requisites to win 4 more games and win a national championship. It's one of the great storylines that I've covered in a long time because you have a team that wasn't just average defensively last year. It was bad defensively, and they've, you know, completely changed their focus and attention on that side of the floor.
Yeah, this might happen a lot more than we think, but I was listening to an interview with Nate Oates after they won their last round, and he was saying that he actually called Rick Pitino after they beat Iona in the first round and said, "Scout me. Where were my weaknesses?" And maybe that happens a lot in college hoops, and maybe it doesn't, but I thought that was a really cool thing. Jon Rothstein is our guest. John, is Buddy Boeheim an NBA prospect?
With the way the game is going right now, with offense and shooting obviously being at a premium, you know, it's hard to see him not being a prospect. I mean, an NBA head coach once told me a long time ago, you are who you can guard in the professional level. Mm-hmm. So I think the defensive aspect of obviously Buddy Boeheim at the NBA level would be a question. But, you know, you have to have a transportable skill. Buddy Boeheim has that and more, and he's obviously continuing to prove that with each game. He's been a really, really good college player now this season.
No, he's been red hot last 4 games as well. I think 25 or more points in each of those 4 games. John, USC and Oregon is going to be a fun one late Sunday night. The last game of all the Sweet 16 matchups. USC dismantled Kansas. Oregon dismantled Iowa. A fun
Guys, hold on one second. I'm going to call you right back. I have a breaking news story. I'm going to call right back if I get it. I'm sorry. Let me call you right back.
Okay.
All
right. There you go. All right, John.
Who's getting the Indiana job?
I don't know. Let's see. He's on the phone. Rothstein just went to the phone right now.
It'd be hilarious if he forgot to mute the Zoom.
We are now.
What? He's been arrested for what?
We are now watching Rothstein online. He's not on. Is he back with us?
Are you back, John? Can you
I
hear
think
us?
I think he's tweeting.
If he's tweeting it.
There he is right there.
Okay.
John,
Come on
are you
back in, John. What do you got for us?
I don't think he's ready.
No, not ready?
Oh, he's
Nate
tweeting.
Oates has been hired by.
This is amazing. Like, this is great on the Twitch
Well, it's
chat.
kind of like, you know, on those...
Rothstein right now is sending out a tweet. He's looking at his phone. He's now staring at the monitor. He just gave us the one finger. So hold on a second.
You know what this reminds me of? Well, yesterday, deadline day, when you have like Woj and stuff up on the ESPN set, and he's got his cell phone. It's like, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this because I gotta do this. Or Schefter at the like NFL trade deadline.
Yeah.
So figure out. This better be good, by the way.
I hope so. He's breaking the College of Charleston job.
No, should I like go to Twitter? Yes. Wait, hold on. Let's see what John is tweeting right now.
Let's see.
Man.
Let's find out. Let's see what Rothstein's tweeting.
What do you think? Is this going to be news that was worth breaking into? Okay, so the last time he tweeted was 18 minutes ago, and it was actually retweeting that his appearance on our show.
Okay, so he hasn't tweeted.
So we don't have anything there. Does he have to get a second source? We might not get anything here. If you're going to be responsible about it, you might need a second source or even a third source if it's a big story.
He's crafting a tweet. He's looking down. He just gave a deep sigh before he just looked down at his phone. Pressure's on Rothstein right now as he seems to be breaking some sort of story.
On the Moose and Maggie show.
On the Moose and Maggie show. Is he...
Okay, John.
Are you ready to go, John?
No, he's not ready
just
to go.
Said no.
Needs a second source. All right. Well, listen, we need you to be responsible.
Guys, let me call you back in the next block. I'm sorry.
Don't
let me call
have
you
to
back
be first. Just have to be right, John.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to be first. Just has to be right.
John's cursing us right now. He's
Veteran.
He's like, I gotta go, guys. You're busting my chops. I think he just dropped it. No, I'm joking. He's like, guys, I just told you, stop harassing me. And John, it was great watching you via the Zoom link break this story, phone to text to Twitter, back to the computer, back to the phone. But the news you broke is
Texas Shaka Smart is going to Marquette. An official announcement is expected soon. He's a Wisconsin native. Texas and Shaka obviously had a marriage, that didn't have the ending this season that it hoped. It's obviously a great match for both parties. Shaka gets to go to a basketball-centric school. So Shaka Smart, barring something unforeseen at the 11th hour, will be the next head coach at Marquette.
Wow,
Boom.
Shaka Smart after the disaster for the Longhorns. So he's going to Marquette. They just fired Woj. So Wojciechowski. So he's out, right? So Shaka going to Marquette. What does Texas now do?
You have to think, obviously, they're going to kick the tires on Chris Beard from Texas Tech. That's always been his dream job. I do know from talking to Texas Tech athletic director Kirby Hockett that he is going to do everything that he can to keep Chris Beard. Chris Beard obviously was a manager at Texas for Tom Penders. So the coaching carousel continues to turn. I'm hopeful that all these jobs can be filled by the time I land in New York at 10 o'clock April 6th, but I'm not cautiously optimistic right now.